They thought humanity was just another species. Ambitious, yes. Persistent, sure. But not dangerous. Not game-changing. Not a force that could rewrite the balance of power. Until we found them. Until we unlocked the secrets of the past. Until we woke something that had been waiting for us. And when the galaxy saw what we had become, they realized something terrifying. Humanity wasn't just rising. We were ascending. So, subscribe now to HFY Aliens Battle and never miss a fight for humanity's survival. Hit the bell icon so you're always ready for the next battle. Now, let's dive into today's story. The Discovery, a fleet larger than planets. The uncharted void, deep in the unexplored reaches of space, beyond the borders of any known empire, humanity's long-range survey ships drifted through the dark. They were searching for new frontiers, new worlds, new opportunities. Instead, they found something impossible. A signal, faint, ancient, a beacon pulsing weakly from the depths of a dead system. At first, the scientists thought it was a mistake. The kind of random cosmic noise that came from pulsars or decaying satellites. But the signal wasn't random. It was structured. It was deliberate. And it had been transmitting for 1,000,000 years. Humanity was not the first to hear it, but they were the first to understand what it meant. A graveyard in the stars. The survey team followed the signal to a star system completely off the charts. A place where no known species had ever ventured. A place that should have been empty. Instead, they found a graveyard. The wreckage of thousands of ships drifted in orbit around a massive gas giant. But these weren't ordinary warships. They were the size of planets. Massive constructs, their hulls covered in scars from ancient battles. Some were intact. Others were torn apart, shattered beyond recognition. And at the center of it all, a single ship, larger than any artificial structure humanity had ever encountered. Waiting, sleeping. For the first time in history, humanity looked upon a fleet that had not been built for conquest. It had been built to fight something even greater. The first landing. The survey team sent out drones, scanning the derelict vessels. No life signs, no distress signals, no records of who had built them or why they had been abandoned. Then, the first boarding team entered. The moment their boots touched the ancient metal floor, something changed. The ship was dead, but the walls still hummed faintly. The air was thin, stale, but breathable. The corridors stretched for miles, vast chambers filled with alien machinery far beyond human comprehension. And then they found the control room. A single console, still powered, still waiting for something, or someone. The lead scientist hesitated. The galaxy was a dangerous place. Every great empire had its warnings about what happened to those who touched the past. But humanity had never been good at leaving things alone. With a deep breath, they reached out and activated the system, the signal that shook the galaxy. The moment the console came online, every ship in the fleet powered up. One by one, ancient engines roared back to life. The gas giant's rings lit up as energy surged through the wreckage. Sensors across the galaxy detected the pulse, a wave of power that radiated outward, touching every major civilization. A warning, an awakening, and the galaxy held its breath. Because whatever had built these ships, whatever had fought in these wars, had just returned, and humanity was at the center of it all. The Watchers react, from the core worlds of the Galactic Council to the war-ravaged territories of the Dominion clans. Every major power received the same data. Massive ships, larger than anything they had ever constructed, once thought to be myths, relics of an age before recorded history. Now, in the hands of a species that had only just begun expanding into the stars. Some saw an opportunity, some saw a threat, but all of them saw the same truth. Humanity had just changed the balance of power, and no one knew what would happen next. The final transmission. As humanity's scientists worked frantically to decipher the ship's ancient systems, another discovery was made. A message, not from the builders, not from the past, but from the ship itself. A single line of text, appearing on every human display, translated instantly. A warning, a promise. We have been waiting for you. And with that, the ship's systems came fully online. For the first time in 1,000,000 years, the fleet of giants had a commander, and the galaxy had a new power to fear. The secrets within, a sleeping power awaits. The awakening of giants. The first ship had come online, not with a sudden burst of energy, not with a violent activation, but with a slow, deliberate pulse, like a heartbeat, steady, patient, aware. Human engineers scrambled to control it, but there was no override, no manual system to shut it down. The ship was doing this on its own, and then the others began to wake. One by one, across the vast, silent graveyard, the ships stirred. The once dead fleet was no longer lifeless. They were coming back, and humanity was standing right in the middle of it. A language beyond time. The scientists worked frantically, trying to decipher the ship's ancient systems. The symbols, the codes, the interfaces, nothing matched any known language. Nothing followed any known logic. It was as if the builders had thought in an entirely different way. Then, something even more impossible happened. The ship began translating itself. The symbols on the screens shifted, adapted. Within minutes, they were readable. Within an hour, they were understandable. And then, a voice echoed through the command deck. Identify. It wasn't a recording. It wasn't a malfunction. It was the ship. It was speaking to them, and it was waiting for an answer. The question of control. The lead scientist took a deep breath. Who were they speaking to? A computer? An intelligence? Something more? Carefully, they responded. This is the United Nations Exploration Fleet. We are humans. We seek knowledge, not war. For a long moment, there was no reply. Then, the ship's systems flared to life. The engines rumbled beneath them. The lights shifted, pulsing with energy. The massive planetary ship had just accepted them as its crew. But it was more than that. The ship had chosen humanity, and the rest of the galaxy was about to find out. The first test, activating the systems. The engineers hesitated before running any commands. This was a ship beyond human comprehension. One wrong move could wipe them from existence. But the ship was not resisting. It was waiting. A command console lit up with a single function. A system marked with ancient, unreadable symbols. But the translation came through clearly. Weapons test. Active. The fleet was not just warships. It was designed for destruction. The question was, what had it been fighting? And if the ships were still here? Had humanity just woken up something far worse? The sleeping army. The next discovery came from a deeper section of the ship. The cryo chambers. Thousands of them. Rows upon rows of sealed pods. Inside, figures lay motionless. Frozen in time. Not human. Not anything humanity had ever seen before. And as the scientists examined them, a terrible realization set in. These beings weren't dead. They were asleep. And they had been waiting a very, very long time. The oldest war in the galaxy. As the engineers worked, fragments of data logs began to surface. They spoke of a war unlike anything in recorded history. A war not between empires, not between species, but between something else, something that should not exist, a force that was never meant to be fought. The builders of these ships had not conquered worlds. They had defended them. And now, after millions of years, that war was about to begin again. Because when humanity had activated the first ship, something else had noticed. The echo in the void. On the far edge of the system, a second signal pulsed. Not from the ships, not from the graveyard, but from deep space. An answering call, a signal that had been waiting for this moment. And when the other civilizations of the galaxy detected it, they realized something terrifying. Humanity had not just found a fleet. They had woken up a battlefield, and the enemy was still out there. The galaxy watches in fear. The news spread like wildfire. Across every empire, every species, every corner of the known universe. Humanity, the young and reckless newcomers, had done the impossible. They had uncovered the greatest lost secret in galactic history, and the consequences were unknown. Some wanted to ally with them. Others wanted to destroy them before they became too powerful. But all of them knew one thing. The balance of power had shifted, and whatever was coming next would be bigger than any war the galaxy had ever seen. The last message from a ship. As the human fleet worked to stabilize their control over the massive warships, another message appeared, translated instantly, projected across every ship in the system. A final warning. The enemy is listening. And then, for the first time, the giant ships began moving on their own. Not randomly, not aimlessly, but preparing, readying themselves, because something was coming, and humanity had just become the first line of defense. The first activation, the galaxy holds its breath, a decision that could change everything. The fleet was waking, not just the ships, but whatever was inside them. The control systems pulsed with energy. The screens flickered, awaiting orders. The massive, planet-sized warships had begun adjusting their positions. But humanity wasn't controlling them. Not yet, because these ships had a purpose. And now that they were active again, that purpose was returning. The engineers hesitated before giving a command. What if they weren't ready? What if these ships weren't meant for human hands? But the galaxy was already watching. They had no choice. It was time to take control. And so, for the first time in history, humanity activated a war machine the size of a planet. And the universe held its breath. The first test, a glimpse of power. The first command was simple, a weapons check, one that would determine just how powerful these ships really were. The scientists selected a nearby asteroid field, a cluster of massive rocks drifting beyond the system's outer edge. A safe, empty target. At least, that's what they thought. The moment the system registered the command, the ship's energy level spiked. The control room vibrated with unseen forces. A deep hum rumbled through the walls. Then, a single beam of light fired from the ship's main battery. It did not explode. It did not shatter the asteroids. Instead, the entire field vanished. No wreckage, no debris, just nothing. As if the rocks had never existed at all. The crew stared in horror. This wasn't a weapon. This was erasure. And they had just used it. The signal that shook the galaxy again. Every major species was watching. Spy probes, surveillance satellites, covert ships lingering at the edges of the system. And every one of them picked up the energy signature. They had all been preparing for war. They had expected these ships to be powerful. But this was something else entirely. A single shot had erased an entire asteroid field. Not vaporized, not shattered, erased. The implications were terrifying. If humanity turned this against an enemy, no shields could block it, no armor could withstand it, and there was no defense against nothingness. Panic spread through the great empires. They had expected a new player in the galactic arena. What they got was something far worse. A force that could reshape reality itself. And they had no idea if humanity even understood what they had just done. The ancient ship's response. But the most disturbing part? The ship's reaction to the test. Because it wasn't alarmed. It didn't register this as an attack. If anything, the ship had simply confirmed that it was operational. And that raised an even more terrifying question. If a basic weapons test had this kind of power, what was this ship actually designed to fight? The echo returns. Something is listening. Then, a new signal appeared. A transmission from somewhere beyond the galactic edge. Faint, almost undetectable. But there, something had heard them. Something was responding. At first, the scientists thought it was a reflection of their own signal. Some kind of delayed transmission. But when they decoded it, they realized it was something else entirely. A warning. A message in the same ancient language as the ships. 3 words. Words that sent fear through every human listening. We are coming. The galactic powers respond. The empires of the galaxy did not wait. They could no longer afford to watch from the shadows. Within days, diplomatic envoys were already en route to meet with humanity. Some came offering alliances. Some came with threats. And some came because they were simply terrified. They wanted to know, what was humanity going to do? Would they claim these ships as their own? Would they use them? Would they unleash something the galaxy wasn't ready for? And the truth was, humanity didn't have an answer yet. But time was running out. Because whatever had sent that message, whatever had been waiting in the void for millions of years, it was finally waking up, and it was coming. The question no one could ignore. The leaders of Earth gathered. Military officials, scientists, world governments, all in one room. The topic was clear. Do we activate the fleet? Do we claim the ships? Do we prepare for war? The discussion lasted for hours. Debates, arguments, warnings. But in the end, there was only one real choice. Humanity had never backed down from a challenge. And they weren't about to start now. They had found these ships for a reason. And whatever was coming, they were going to face it. The final order. Humanity takes control. The decision was made. Humanity would activate the fleet. They would learn how to control them, how to command them, how to turn them into the greatest defense force the galaxy had ever seen. The first fleet of planet-sized starships had just gained a new commander. And for the first time in history, humanity wasn't just another species in the galaxy. They were something else, something greater, something that the rest of the universe had never seen before. And if war was coming, humanity would be ready. The terrified response, all eyes on Earth. The transmission that changed everything. The moment humanity activated the first ship, the universe reacted. Every major civilization received the same data. A fleet of planet-sized warships. Ancient, powerful, and now in human hands. And with that knowledge, the galaxy realized something terrifying. Humanity had just become a wild card, a species that had gone from a rising force to a potential superpower overnight, and no one knew what they were going to do next. The great debate among the galactic powers. The galactic empires called for emergency meetings. Across hundreds of homeworlds, thousands of leaders gathered in war rooms, councils, and chambers of power. The debate was simple. What do we do about the humans? The first response came from the Conclave of Order. They had ruled for centuries, maintaining peace through control. Their stance was clear. Humanity must be stopped. These ships are too dangerous to be left unchecked. Others took a different view. The Celestial Trade Union, a coalition of merchants and industrialists, saw something else. This is an opportunity. If humanity can be persuaded, they could be powerful allies. And then there were the warlords, the great conquerors of the galaxy, watching in silence, calculating, considering. Could they use humanity? Could they steal what humanity had found? Or worse, would they have to destroy them before it was too late? The threat of a preemptive strike. For some, the answer was simple. Attack first. Wipe out the humans before they learn how to use the ships. Strike before the balance of power shifted forever. The Dominion clans, a warlike empire built on conquest, were the first to suggest it. We cannot allow them to grow stronger. We must act now. They argued for an immediate invasion of the Sol system, to destroy the fleet before humanity mastered it. Some were tempted, some hesitated, and some were terrified, because if a young species like humanity had already claimed these ships, then what else were they capable of? If the first war against humanity failed, would they unleash these ships upon the galaxy? Could anyone stop them? No one had an answer, and no one was willing to risk finding out the hard way. The first alien envoys arrive. As the great empires debated, others moved quickly. Alien diplomats, spies, and agents rushed toward Earth. They arrived with different intentions. Some came to negotiate, some came to observe, and some came to sabotage. Within days, Earth became the center of the galaxy's attention. Ambassadors from species that had never acknowledged humanity's existence now demanded meetings. For the first time, humanity was not asking for a seat at the table. The table had come to them, and Earth's leaders realized something. For the first time in history, they had leverage. The Shadow War begins. Even as the official envoys arrived, another battle was taking place behind the scenes. Covert agents from rival species infiltrated human space. Some worked to steal the secrets of the fleet. Others attempted to sabotage the activation process. Assassination plots were uncovered. Spies were caught within days of arriving. The discovery of the fleet had not just triggered political chaos. It had started a secret war, and humanity was fighting it on all fronts. The internal divide. What does humanity do next? The great powers of Earth were split. The military saw an opportunity. We control the greatest weapons in history. No one can challenge us now. The politicians saw a danger. If we move too fast, the entire galaxy may turn against us. And the scientists saw a mystery. These ships were not just weapons. They had a purpose. We need to understand them before we use them. Debates raged in secret. No one knew what humanity's next move would be. Would they fortify? Would they expand? Would they strike first? Or would they unlock the true purpose of these ships? Because deep within the ship's systems, more data was being uncovered. Fragments of an ancient war, a warning from the past, and something else, something worse. A second fleet, one that was not built by the same hands, one that was already moving, the message no one expected. Then, another message came through the ship's systems, not from the past, not from the galaxy, but from the builders themselves. A final recorded transmission. A holographic projection appeared within the command centers of the fleet. A figure, tall, alien, but unmistakably intelligent. It spoke in a language long dead, but the translation came through perfectly. We left these ships for those who would need them. If you're seeing this message, the time has come. The humans in the room stared at the hologram, waiting for more. The figure's expression was grim. We failed to stop them. You must not. And then, the image flickered. A final warning. They are already awake. The transmission cut. The room fell silent. Because now, humanity knew the truth. They had not just inherited weapons. They had inherited a war that had never ended. And now it was their fight. The universe holds its breath. As the galaxy debated, as war councils formed, as covert agents fought in the shadows, humanity stood at a crossroads. They were no longer explorers, no longer just another species. They were something else, the guardians of a lost war, the inheritors of a power beyond comprehension. And whatever was coming, the galaxy was not ready, but humanity was. The awakening, the ships were not empty. The sleeping army. The first discovery had been the ships themselves, a fleet the size of planets, waiting in silence. The second was their power, weapons that could erase entire regions of space in a single shot. But the third discovery? That was what changed everything. Because the ships were not empty. They had never been. And now, the things inside them were starting to wake up. The cryo chambers open. Deep within the heart of the largest ship, teams of human explorers moved cautiously through the halls. They had already discovered the control systems. They had already activated the ship's core. But now they had found something else. Rows of massive, sealed pods, stretching for miles. Each one contained a figure. Tall, alien, frozen in time. At first, scientists assumed they were dead, the remains of a forgotten species. But then one of the pods hissed open. A body stirred inside, and the heart monitors, silent for millions of years, began to beep. One by one, the figures were waking up, and no one knew if they were friend or foe. The first contact, a being older than the stars. The first of the awakened figures staggered from its pod. Its skin was dark and metallic, almost as if it were part machine. Its eyes, glowing with energy, fixed on the humans standing before it. For a long moment, no one moved. Then in a voice deep and ancient, it spoke. Not in an unknown language, not in strange sounds, but in perfect translated speech, as if the ship had already prepared it for this moment. What year is it? The humans hesitated. One of them answered, giving the current star cycle. The figure's expression darkened. Then we are already too late. A war that never ended. The awakened alien called itself Veilzir, a name from civilization that had vanished from all known history. He and his people were the last survivors of an ancient war. A war against something not of this galaxy. A force that had no name. Because to name it was to invite destruction. Veilzir's people had built these ships. Not to conquer, not to expand, but to stop something. And they had failed. We were the last line of defense, he explained. But we lost. We fell. And so we sealed ourselves away in the hope that one day another would rise to continue the fight. His glowing eyes narrowed. Tell me, humans, have you seen the signs? The lead scientist hesitated before responding. What signs? Veilzir's gaze darkened. The shadows at the edge of the void. The whispers and the static. The stars that vanish without a trace. He took a step forward. Because if you have, then the enemy has already returned. The warnings begin. As the rest of the cryo chambers opened, more of the ancient soldiers awoke. Their bodies were weak, but their minds were sharp, and their memories were full of warnings. The ships had been built as weapons of last resort. They had been designed to stop an enemy that defied understanding, a force that could not be reasoned with, that did not conquer, that did not negotiate. It only consumed. Veilzir called them the Nameless. And if they were waking now, then humanity had inherited more than just a fleet. They had inherited a war. The rest of the galaxy reacts. News of the awakened warriors spread faster than light. Across every empire, every power, every species. And the reactions were instant. Some were terrified. The thought of an enemy that had nearly wiped out a civilization far older than theirs was horrifying. Others were skeptical. This is just human propaganda, a way to justify keeping these ships. Some prepared for war, not against the Nameless, but against humanity. Because if the humans could control this fleet, then they could conquer the galaxy, unless they were stopped first. But then, something happened that no one expected. A signal, a transmission from the deep void. The first true warning. Humanity's deep space satellites picked it up first. A pulse, a pattern, a response. Something had heard the activation of the fleet, and now was answering. The ancient warriors reacted immediately. Veilzir's expression darkened. That is not a distress call. He turned toward the human commanders. That is a hunt signal. And then, across the galaxy, the impossible began to happen. Stars, entire stars, began to disappear. Gone. Not exploded. Not destroyed. Simply missing. The same way they had vanished millions of years ago. The race against time. The ancient warriors knew what came next. The same thing that had happened to their people. Worlds would go dark. Fleets would disappear. Then, when the enemy was strong enough, they would strike. This was not an invasion. It was a harvest. And humanity was now standing on the front lines. Veilzir's voice was grim. Your people have awoken the fleet. That means you are now part of the war. He turned to the control panels. The ships, massive, ancient, unstoppable, began shifting their positions. We do not have time to prepare. The Nameless already know we are here. His eyes locked onto the human commander. You must decide now, do you run? Or do you fight? The galaxy watches in fear. Across the known universe, species that had never feared humanity before now sat in silent terror. The humans had not just found an ancient fleet. They had not just activated weapons that could wipe out entire star systems. They had awakened the enemy of an entire forgotten age. And the worst part? Humanity had already chosen. They were not running. They were taking command. And the first planet-sized warship in a million years had just locked onto its first target. The Forgotten War, a warning from the past. The ghosts of a dead civilization. The ancient ships had awakened. Their crews had returned. And with them came memories of the last war. It was not recorded in any galactic history. It was not written in the archives of the great empires. Because those who had fought in it did not survive to tell the tale. The war had not been fought for power, not for conquest. It had been a war for existence itself. A war against something that did not belong in this galaxy. And now it was happening again. The truth humanity never knew. Veilzir stood before the human commanders. Behind him, his fellow survivors of the ancient war gathered, their expressions grim. He gestured toward the ship's central control display. A star map flickered into existence. At first, it looked like a chart of known space. Then, slowly, the map expanded. Beyond the territories of the galactic empires. Beyond the edge of explored space. Into a region that should have been empty. But it wasn't. Dots of red appeared. Hundreds. Thousands. Marking something moving in the dark. Something that had been waiting. Veilzir's voice was low and steady. They're already here. The enemy that cannot be understood. The Nameless. That was what the Ancient Ones called them. Not because they did not have a name, but because no one had survived long enough to name them. They did not speak. They did not negotiate. They did not leave bodies behind. They simply erased. Entire fleets had vanished. Entire worlds. Entire civilizations. It was not conquest. It was not extermination. It was something far worse. A purge. And now it was happening again. The pattern of destruction. The ship's records told a story. One that had happened millions of years ago. The Nameless did not arrive all at once. They did not come in fleets. They came as a whisper, as a flicker in the background noise of space. A signal detected by explorers. An anomaly found in a forgotten system. By the time anyone realized the truth, it was already too late. One by one, the stars began to disappear. Not destroyed, not collapsed, just gone. And then, the real attack began. The final battle of the Ancients. The last time the Nameless came, the Ancients had tried everything. Their fleets were stronger than anything in the galaxy today. Their weapons could shatter moons. Their armies stretched across thousands of worlds. None of it mattered, because the Nameless were not fighting a war. They were ending one. And in the end, the last of the Ancients had only one choice left. They built the planet-sized warships. They poured everything they had into a final defense. And it almost worked. The Nameless were pushed back, but the cost was too high. The Ancients had no one left to rebuild. So they made a choice. They put themselves into cryosleep, sealed their fleet in a graveyard of stars, and waited for someone else to find them, for someone strong enough to finish the war, for someone who would not run. And now, that someone was humanity. The first signs of the new war. Veilzir turned back to the human commanders. His expression was grim. You must understand, the moment you activated these ships, you became the new enemy of the Nameless. He gestured toward the map. More red markers appeared. Moving closer, the Nameless had heard the activation pulse. They had detected the awakening of the fleet. And now they were coming. Not next year. Not in a century. Now, the galaxy reacts. Fear and chaos. The warning spread faster than light. Across every empire, every world, every hidden outpost. Some refused to believe it. These are just old war stories. Myths. Others panicked. If the Nameless are real, we need to run. Now. But the smartest ones? The ones who had ruled for centuries? They did not deny it. They simply asked one question. Can humanity stop them? And the truth was, nobody knew. Not even the humans themselves. The first attack. Then, the first human colony went silent. A system near the edge of explored space. Not under attack. Not invaded. Just gone. Like it had never existed. Ships sent to investigate never returned. Probes sent beyond the border stopped transmitting. And then the second colony vanished. Then the third. The Nameless were no longer waiting. The war had already begun. The choice that would shape the future. The ancient warriors had fought this war before, and they knew there were only two paths forward, run or fight. But humanity was not known for running. The decision was made. The fleet, the planet-sized warships that had been locked away for millennia, would be prepared. Every one of them would go to war, not just against a threat to humanity, but a threat to existence itself. This was not just a battle. This was a final stand. And for the first time, the Nameless would face an enemy that refused to be erased. The last words of Veilzir. As the war councils gathered, as the ships powered up, Veilzir turned to humanity's leaders. His expression unreadable. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched species vanish into nothing. And now, he saw something he had never seen before. Hope. Veilzir took a deep breath and spoke. You have chosen war. A pause. Then a slow, grim nod. Then let us teach you how to win it. The universe prepares for the largest war in history. The fleets moved into formation. The galaxy stood on edge. The Nameless were coming. And humanity? They were ready. Because if the Nameless wanted to erase them, they would have to fight for it. And this time, humanity was here to stay. The first attack, something else was watching. The silence before the storm. The war had already begun. Not with a grand invasion. Not with fleets clashing in open space, but with absence. The first colonies had disappeared without a trace. No explosions. No distress calls. Just gone. And that was what terrified the galaxy the most. The Nameless were not fighting for victory. They were fighting to erase. And now, the first signs of their return were everywhere. A galaxy on edge. Every major species held its breath. Some prepared for war. Some hid behind their borders. Others, still refusing to believe the warnings, did nothing. But the smart ones? They turned their eyes toward Earth. Because humanity had something no one else did. The planet-sized warships. The last remnants of a war older than the stars. And the galaxy was waiting to see, would humanity rise to the challenge? Or would they vanish like the civilizations before them? The first contact, a fleet vanishes. The first real battle began with a reconnaissance mission. A fleet of 20 human warships, a mix of old Earth ships and the newly reactivated ancient vessels. Their mission was simple: find the Nameless, track their movements, gather intelligence. They never returned. Not a single distress call, not a single survivor. Only one signal was received. A brief, garbled transmission before the fleet was wiped from existence. For words, barely audible through the static. They are not alone. And then, silence. A new enemy in the dark. The implications were terrifying. For the first time, the ancient warriors aboard the planet-sized ships hesitated. Veilzir stood before the human commanders, his face grim. We thought we knew our enemy. He turned toward the holographic star map, displaying the regions where ships had disappeared. But this is different. The Nameless had always erased. They did not leave ships behind. They did not send messages. They did not play with their prey. But now, something else was moving with them. Something that was watching. Something that was waiting. Something even the ancients had never encountered before. The Phantom Fleet appears. It started with shadows on the sensors. Fleeting, unstable, impossible to lock onto. Then came the echoes, distorted transmissions, faint, overlapping whispers, speaking in no known language. Human technicians worked desperately to decode them, running every algorithm they had. Then, finally, they got a partial translation. The message repeated over and over. A single phrase. The witness is watching. No one knew what it meant. But one thing was clear. The Nameless were no longer alone. And whatever had joined them was different. More calculated. More patient. More intelligent. The Battle of the Dead Moon. Humanity's response was immediate. A new fleet was assembled. 50 of their strongest warships, reinforced by 3 of the ancient planet-sized vessels. This time, they weren't just searching. They were hunting. Their destination, a dead moon on the edge of a collapsing star system. It was the last known location of the missing reconnaissance fleet. If the Nameless were still there, humanity would force them into battle. And this time, they wouldn't be the ones disappearing. The trap is sprung. The human fleet entered the system cautiously, scanning for any trace of their missing ships. The moon below was lifeless, a barren rock floating in the dark. But the energy readings were off the charts. Something was here, something powerful. Then, the shadows moved. At first, it looked like the void itself was shifting. Then, ships began to appear. Not nameless vessels. Something else. Something new. They were not attacking. They were watching, as if waiting to see what humanity would do. And that was when the real attack began. The Nameless revealed themselves. A ripple spread through space. A distortion that tore through the human fleet like a storm. Systems flickered. Weapons failed. Engines stalled. And then, emerging from the darkness, they came. For the first time in modern history, the Nameless revealed themselves. Their ships were unlike anything ever seen. Not constructed, but grown. A fusion of living matter and cosmic energy. Moving like predators, not machines. Their weapons were not energy cannons or missiles. They were pure void. They fired absence itself. And the moment it touched a human ship, that ship ceased to exist. Not exploded. Not damaged. Just gone. The first counterstrike, humanity fights back. For a moment, it seemed like all was lost. The human fleet was already failing. The Nameless were unlike anything they had fought before. But humanity had one advantage. The planet-sized warships. And now it was time to see what they could really do. The command was given. A single word. Fire. The first of the ancient ships activated its main weapon. A beam of raw, golden energy erupted from its core, brighter than a star, faster than light. The first Nameless warship was hit directly. It did not vanish. It did not disappear. For the first time in a million years, a nameless ship was destroyed. And that changed everything. The witness speaks. The moment the nameless ship died, the shadows stirred again. The other presence, the one that had been watching, reacted. A deep, unnatural sound echoed through space. Not static, not a transmission, something closer to a laugh. Then, for the first time, the unknown ships moved. They turned toward the human fleet, as if acknowledging them for the first time. And then a message, clear, precise, spoken in perfect human language. Interesting. The human commanders froze. Because this wasn't a mindless force. This wasn't a nameless horror. This was something intelligent, something ancient. And it was watching humanity with amusement. The battle wasn't over. It had just begun. And now, humanity had the attention of something far worse than the nameless. Something that wanted to see just how far they could go. The battle for the fleet. A war humanity never expected. The unseen war begins. The nameless had revealed themselves. Their weapons had erased entire ships in an instant. And yet, they had never faced resistance before. Never encountered a force capable of fighting back. But then humanity fired the first real shot. And for the first time in a million years, a nameless vessel was destroyed. That single act changed everything. Because now, the war was no longer one-sided. And the nameless were about to take humanity seriously. The witness watches. As the battle unfolded, the unknown fleet, the ones watching from the darkness, finally moved. They had not fired a shot, had not interfered, had simply observed. Until now, a deep, unnatural hum spread through space. It was not a sound. It was a presence, a force pressing against every human mind, like a whisper that couldn't be ignored. And then, a transmission, clear, perfect, spoken in human language. You are different. The voice was neither hostile nor friendly, just curious, as if humanity was nothing more than a new variable in an ancient equation. The unknown fleet had chosen its moment, and now it was their turn to act. The nameless strike back. The nameless had spent eons hunting, erasing, destroying. Now they had found something they could not erase instantly, and they did not like it. The void around the battlefield shifted. Dozens, then hundreds, of nameless ships materialized, each one a writhing mass of dark energy and shifting matter, each one capable of unmaking reality itself. For every ship humanity destroyed, 10 more appeared. The planet-sized warships fired their massive energy beams, destroying nameless vessels in blinding golden light. But even they had limits, and humanity knew this wasn't a battle. It was a test. The nameless were studying them, probing them, finding their weaknesses, because they had never lost before, and they weren't about to start now. The unknown fleet joins the battle. Then the real war began, because without warning, the unknown fleet, the ones who had been watching, opened fire. Not on humanity, not on the planet-sized warships, but on the nameless. And their weapons were unlike anything humanity had ever seen. It was not energy. It was not kinetic. It was something else. Each shot ripped through nameless ships, dissolving them into pure nothingness. Not erased, not destroyed, but consumed. The nameless screamed in response. A soundless, telepathic howl that shook the minds of every being present. And for the first time, humanity realized. The nameless were afraid. A war older than the stars. Veilzir watched in shock. This is impossible. The nameless had never feared anything, never hesitated, never ran. But now, before their very eyes, some of the nameless ships were retreating, fleeing the battlefield like prey. And the unknown fleet? They didn't chase. They didn't press the attack. They simply watched, waiting, studying, calculating. And then they sent another transmission. 3 words. You interest us. And just like that, they vanished. Gone. Leaving only humanity and the nameless behind. What had just happened? The battle was over. The nameless had retreated. The unknown fleet had disappeared. And humanity? They were left with more questions than answers. Who were the Watchers? Why had they helped? What had they done to the nameless? And most importantly, what do they want? The aftermath. a universe in shock. The battle was broadcast across the galaxy. Millions watched in real time as humanity stood its ground, as the planet-sized warships fired their ancient weapons, as the Nameless retreated for the first time in history, and as the unknown fleet, a force no one had ever seen before, entered the war. The galactic powers were in chaos. Some saw hope, some saw danger, but all of them saw the same undeniable truth. Humanity had stepped into a war beyond their understanding, and somehow they had survived. The ultimate question, what comes next? The war had only just begun. The Nameless were still out there. The unknown fleet was still watching, and humanity was now at the center of it all. For the first time, Earth was not just a rising power. They were a deciding factor in the fate of the galaxy. And as the war councils gathered once more, as the ships prepared for the next battle, one thing became terrifyingly clear. The galaxy was no longer the same, because now, the greatest threat to the universe had a new enemy, an enemy that refused to be erased, an enemy that fought back, an enemy called humanity. And this war? It was just getting started. The final war begins, the betrayal of humanity, the moment of treachery. Humanity had done the impossible. They had awakened a fleet larger than planets. They had forced the Nameless to retreat. They had adapted the warships to their own control. For the first time in galactic history, the tides had shifted. The Nameless were no longer the only unstoppable force. But what no one expected, what no one had prepared for, was that the first real attack on humanity wouldn't come from the Nameless at all. It would come from within the galaxy itself. The unthinkable act. It happened without warning. One of the newly integrated warships, a vessel fully under human control, exploded in orbit over Earth. Not in combat, not by accident, but by sabotage. The detonation was so precise, so carefully executed, that it was clear this was deliberate. The warship disintegrated in a flash of light. Millions of tons of ancient alloy and weaponry gone in an instant. The loss was catastrophic. But worse than that, it was a message, a warning that humanity was now a target. And not just from the Nameless, the hidden enemy. The investigation was swift. The traitors had tried to cover their tracks. But Earth's intelligence forces worked fast. And soon, they found the truth. The sabotage had not come from within. It had come from outside, from one of the very galactic powers that had once called humanity an ally. A faction that had watched as humanity rose too quickly, that had seen the warships come alive, that had realized if humanity controlled these ships, they would never be challenged again. And so they acted, not in open war, not in battle, but in the shadows. A coward strike meant to cripple humanity before they could become unstoppable. But instead, all they had done was light the fuse of something much worse. The universe reacts. When news of the sabotage spread, the galaxy erupted. Some empires condemned the act. Some defended it. Others remained silent. But one thing became clear. This was no longer a war between humanity and the Nameless. It was becoming something bigger. A war between civilizations. Between the old powers that wanted to keep humanity in check, and the new force that refused to be controlled. Humanity's response, a warning to the stars. The leaders of Earth gathered in an emergency council. There were no arguments, no hesitation, only one decision to be made. Humanity had always given warnings first, always tried to speak before striking. But this was an act of war, and the response would match it. A single transmission was sent to every empire, every leader, every fleet in the galaxy. Humanity's warning was simple. This was your only chance. There will not be another. And then, across every warship, every battle station, every command center, a single order was given. Prepare for war. The war machines awakened fully. The planet-sized warships, once locked away for eternity, were no longer relics. They were no longer sleeping giants. They were fully operational. The link-born pilots took their places. Their minds merged with the ships, becoming one with the machines of war. And for the first time, the full power of the fleet was unleashed. No longer bound by hesitation. No longer testing their limits. This was humanity at full strength, and the universe was about to witness what that truly meant. The betrayer's fleet. Annihilation begins. The faction responsible for the sabotage had made a fatal error. They thought they had time. Time to prepare defenses. Time to make alliances. Time to fight humanity on their terms. But humanity did not give them time. The retaliation was immediate. Before the enemy fleet could even react, the first warship arrived. A single planet-sized vessel, moving at speeds no known empire could match. And when it fired, the enemy homeworld's defense grid vanished. Not shattered, not disabled, erased. The same power that had once erased asteroids and nameless ships had been turned against a world. And now, there was no stopping it. This wasn't a skirmish. This wasn't a battle. This was retribution. And when the war ended, there would be no survivors. The Nameless returned, stronger than before. As the war between civilizations ignited, something else was watching. The Nameless. They had retreated. They had regrouped. And now they had adapted. The first wave had been a test. But now they were sending something worse. Something older. Something stronger. And as humanity turned its attention to war with the traitorous empires, a new darkness began to spread at the edges of known space. The real war had finally begun, and humanity was about to learn what it truly meant to fight for survival. The last stand begins. The final transmissions from deep space probes arrived at Earth's command center. The readings were clear. The Nameless were moving, not in small fleets, not in hunting groups, but in full force. This was no longer a test. This was their extinction wave, the kind that had ended civilizations before, the kind that had erased empires older than humanity itself. And now, it was Earth's turn, or at least, that's what the Nameless thought, because humanity wasn't like the others. Humanity did not run. They did not surrender. And they had one thing the Nameless had never faced before: a fleet of warships the size of planets. Fully armed, fully operational, and fully controlled by the most dangerous force in the galaxy. Humanity was no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting for domination. And this war was going to change everything. The final transmission before the war began. As the last Nameless fleet emerged from the void, as the traitorous empires prepared their counterattacks, as humanity stood on the precipice of the largest war in galactic history, a single message was broadcast from the flagship of the human fleet. A message sent to every species, every empire, every enemy that dared to challenge them. You wanted to know what humanity is capable of? You're about to find out. And then, the war began. The end, or just the beginning. Humanity had awakened the past. They had taken control of a fleet beyond imagination. They had survived betrayal. They had forced the Nameless to fear. And now, they were leading the charge. The war was here. And for the first time in history, it wasn't humanity that was afraid. It was the rest of the galaxy. Because now, the gods of war had arrived. And they were called humanity.